We've already seen some of that in terms of the underperformance of the financial sector in general, but the banking sector in particular. But how has that manifested itself? It's manifested itself by investors, concentrating investors in the largest banks, in the safest banks, in those with the strongest capital ratios. We think those are the banks which are more likely to do better. And if we see a significant fall in prices of those well-capitalized banks, that should create the opportunity for investors as we move forward.
وما هي أولوياتكم بالنسبة للاستراتيجية الاستثمارية في ظل ما تتوقعونه من استمرار للتقلبات والضبابية في أسواق المال العالمية؟ يعني كيف تتخذون قراراتكم الاستثمارية في القطاعات أو الشركات التي تستهدفونها؟
Yeah, I think we had to be a little bit careful around volatility because we look at 22 and we saw Fed funds rates rise from 0.25% to, well, they're going to be 5% plus as we move forward. As we go through this year, we're going to see far more stability around that. So volatility around the cost of capital is going to be much lower in 23 than it was in 22. And we have to be very careful about extrapolating from what happened in 22 as we saw rates rise as what we see in 23 as rates top out and pause. So as a result of that, we have to look at what occurred in 22 when those companies with maybe longer duration earnings, more sustainable earnings, which had higher valuations, those valuations came right back down. That doesn't mean they're suddenly going to take off from where they are right now, but we're seeing a much better environment whereby you see the cost of capital much more level in 23 than it was in 22. And so we would look at some of those technology companies and say, actually, those are areas which are more likely to benefit in an environment right now rather than what we saw in 22.
وما هي توقعاتكم بالنسبة لتحركات الاحتياطي الفدرالي مستقبلا في الولايات المتحدة؟ هل تتماشى تقديراتكم مع ما يحتسبه السوق في الوقت الحالي ولماذا؟
So I think in order to look at how we see the progression of Fed funds rates as we go through 23, it's really important to put ourselves in the shoes of the Fed governors, the Fed members, because they've been through a period where they've been accused of being behind the curve. They raised rates too late. Inflation went to levels that they would never have expected and for which they were criticized, approaching 10% or so. Inflation comes back down now to the 5% or so, and we believe it'll come down a bit more as we go through the summer, 4% or so. But if you are one of those voting members of the Fed and you get to the second half of this year and you start to cut rates and inflation, rather than falling further, actually starts to rise a little bit, you are going to be very concerned that you then may have to reverse that decision of cutting rates and have to raise them once again. So if you're in the shoes of those Fed governors, I think you're going to be cautious about cutting rates too soon and being accused of being behind the curve once again, particularly if we see a slowdown but not a significant recession and not a significant rise in unemployment in the US, and if inflation is still 4% or so, which is above where they would like it to be.
فإذا في ظل كل هذه المعطيات، هل تتوقعون أن الاقتصاد العالمي سيتجنب الدخول في ركود اقتصادي خلال السنة الجارية؟
Have we avoided a global recession? We're expecting to see a slowdown as we go through this year. If there is a recession, it is going to be mild within the US and within Europe. There was concern at the back end of last year, recession in Europe may be more severe given energy prices. We believe that is less likely right now. So I don't think the question should be, are we going to avoid a global recession? Is the global recession, if we get one, is it going to be severe? To which the important answer is absolutely not. And let's not forget, China, huge economy, second largest economy in the world, is coming out of zero COVID, and we expect growth in China to be closer to 5% this year. So you put that alongside very little contraction in Europe and the US, and you'd see, yes, we avoid global recession.